to fight impunity, to recover stolen assets, or to punish offenders, but it's a fight that is being used. And the more you see the charges, the more you see how fast it has become. It's not a genuine fight against corruption.
What does that then say about, how independent structures of government are? For example, the police, the judicial system.
Well, it's regrettable. Look at ECZ and the two by-elections we had in Kavushi and Kwacha. How ECZ, a democratic institution, an institution that should foster democracy in our country, that should help carry the will of our people, that should be the birth attendant to our democracy. It should be the midwife to our democracy, participated in the stealing of those 2 seats. And you have seen that repeated by the SEC, where they target the opposition. You've seen the police target Patriotic Front leaders. Not that there's anything they've done, but because they just need to punish them. For example, if we are fighting violence, the young people that beat our youths on Youth Day in Kitwe, where they followed them in church and beat them up and stoned them, would have been arrested. The young provincial youth leader on the Copper Belt who belongs to the UPND, who told this country that he had banned the PF from attending national events, and he says we'll beat them wherever we'll find them. He will have been arrested. The youths that stormed the radio station in Chingola, where Chufya Tayali was appearing, and in Muflira, would have been arrested if we're genuine about, for example, the fight against political violence. And the list goes on.
So you're telling me, I need to understand, because we're going back and forth between history and the present. If the current government was seriously, genuinely serious about, anti-political violence, those people perpetrating these acts would have been arrested. I tend to remember several Patriotic Front members, cadres, sympathizers, storming radio stations across the country. I don't remember any of them being arrested. I don't remember any of them being arrested for going onto social media to insult political opponents to the ruling party. I don't remember any of them being arrested or cautioned, for that matter, for becoming, security that was offered even to the head of state. You had party security that was, at the airports to receive the Republican presidents and the like. I don't remember any of them being cautioned for assuming jurisdiction over provinces. You can't come to this particular province if you're an opposition leader because this is our bedroom and things like that. What are you saying then about how serious the Patriotic Front was with regards to, maintaining law and order?
So the Patriotic Front lost power not because they didn't work, but for things like that, where they allowed impunity, they allowed political violence, they allowed thuggery, they allowed cadreism. Those are the reasons our people rejected the Patriotic Front.
Right.
And it is sad that the UPND didn't seem to have listened to our people. We went to an election, and the Patriotic Front was punished for its mistakes. Why would the party repeat those mistakes? And that is profoundly worrying our people, that the UPND seem to have learned nothing. They keep on repeating acts of corruption. There is now a presence of indisputable large-scale acts of corruption at Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Tourism. You can name them. Issues of political violence has risen again. I see the President Hakainde Hichilema, keep on saying that there is no political violence anymore. No, there is. See what happens in by-elections. See how our members and our party agents are chased, beaten, their camps burnt, like we saw in Chilawombwe, in Serenje, and in Luingu. You still see the perpetration of this violence. And sometimes I'm wondering why the media do not highlight that. I don't know whether we want to fit in the description by the president that violence, political violence and cadreism has gone, when it has not. It has resurfaced at markets and bus stops. I was in town today in Cairo Road and Freedom Way, and people are being fined by party activists, where they fine them every day, not the council, but party activists. And so someone at the top says, cadreism ended, there is no violence, there is peace in the markets, you can wear whatever material you can wear. That's not true. You need to go on the ground and see for yourself. Yes, there could be some changes, but like I'm saying, a mistake in the past doesn't make it right because it's being done by the UPND. Corruption under PF remains corruption under the UPND. So if there is corruption now, why don't law enforcement agencies call the accused and the corrupt? Why do they have to concentrate on old corruption? In fact, the goodness with fighting the current corruption is that you might actually prevent money from leaving the treasury.
Right. I tend to remember then Party Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, Honorable Davis Mwila, making this statement. Tuwombesh, let's work very hard, win the 2021 elections, because if we fail to do so, there will be mass arrests. We will be arrested. Wakatukaka. He seems to have, become a prophet at that time, because what he was saying is happening now. But I'm sure he wasn't saying that from without. He must have been saying that because he knew there would be a reason to arrest you, because otherwise, why haven't you, for example, been arrested?
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that question. And Honorable Davis Mwila was in trade union for a long time. He's been an activist for many years. And then he's been a member of the Patriotic Front, I think from 2003. He was in opposition for 7 years and saved government. And then before that, he understood how politics are done in this country. That there is a tendency for vengeance. There is a tendency to use mistakes of the past to whip them to the people that, look, you don't have a job because they stole the money. Yeah. Your water and reticulation program has not been done because they stole the money. You are poorly paid because they stole the money. You don't have these social amenities because they stole the money.
Right.
Honorable Davis Mwila knew that. And he was speaking from that context, that you probably be punished. Right. You be used as an excuse for the lack of development and lack and failure of the current government. And this is what we have seen, that the PF is used as an excuse. They blame the PF. Even when the sun rises, they believe it might not rise because of the Patriotic Front. So he has a whole understanding of our politics operate in this country. And that's why we need to change our politics, that we focus on development, we focus on building this country. We spend unnecessary amount of money pursuing political opponents. I have been at various police stations every other day, yes, understanding why any of our members have been arrested. And I always wonder the kind of resources we are spending on pursuing these people. And in many cases, it's not even just, but just to punish. I wish we could spend more time on how to revitalize the copper belt, how to ensure that Mopani and KCM is working, how to ensure that our agricultural sector is working. How can we realize our potential as a country? But we spend so much less. We discuss UPND and PF all our political lives. If you watch any news item, whether it's radio, TV, on any station, it's just a feud between parties, or in this case now there's a big feud between the UPND and the church.
And I would like to get to that at some point, but since you've touched on it, let's get to it now. This is not new between the church and a party in government. It's not new. We've had this even under the PF. What is your context with regards to statements that were made about graphs and about the church staying away from politics?
First of all, Mbasela, the President and the Secretary General must apologize for those comments they've made against the church. The church have a role to speak for the voiceless. The church has a role to push social justice. The church has a role to worry about our life now and our life to come, after our afterlife. The church has that very strong role. You saw Bishop Joseph Imakando, Bread of Life, one of the people that I respect so much, is like my my spiritual father too. He stood at the pulpit and called for changes 2 weeks before elections.
Right.
And he said there must be change because high cost of living, price of milling, price of fuel. He tabulated a whole list of things that required that we needed to change the country. Was he castigated? Was he insulted? Was he called names? No. This country has had Father Umberto. Many people might not know.
Yes.
Father Mia, Bishop De Jong, Bishop Paul Duffy. These were fiery critics of government, and they issued very, very strong statements. And with our colleagues, the thin-skinned colleagues in the UPND, who seems to be rattled by just very light comments about the social welfare of our people. On the graphs, I was the first one to criticize the president. I said the president is speaking to a mass audience. He cannot use graphs and diagrams and heavy statistics. Although it's a press conference, although it is with the press, he's live on TV, he's being listened to countrywide at the same time as a journalist. And any communications expert will tell you that when you are communicating to a mass audience, you use language that the most educated person can appreciate, but also the least educated person can also appreciate.
Right.
And the heavy use of diagrams, graphs and statistics, you have to temper them. If I'm speaking to a small key audience of educated people like journalists, yes, I can go heavy with statistics and graphs and diagrams. But when I'm speaking to the country like this, imagine I'm interrupting this program like I'm giving a PowerPoint presentation. We will lose the audience. Yeah, because not many will understand. I've seen the argument that vanamayo bonse badishiba under 5 card valalanga omwana ati 9 pali 2 kg 2-3 kg ka graph kale kwela ero nga kabwera omwana awo ndabale shiba tiyo. So Emmanuel, everyone knows the graph well. We can fool ourselves like that, but that the president must communicate. The president is like a father of the nation. He represents all of us. When he speaks, we want to see that in him, the decorum. And that office provides hope to the hopeless, to the unemployed. He provides that hope to the poor, to those that are, indigent, to whoever is looking up to government for national solution. So you therefore have to speak in the similar manner, inspire hope to all.
It's interesting because, I look back at the relationship between the Patriotic Front and the church. We've had times when we even heard of people calling themselves Christians for Lungu, something which was, highly criticized by the opposition then, UPND and others. We also saw, for example, how Bishop John Mambo was, in the eyes of a lot of Patriotic Front sympathizers, an enemy. We saw how when he was incarcerated for 128 days, and we saw, people speaking that he must be released. I remember how the Patriotic Front called Father Telesphore Mpundu a madman. How, for example, then Lusaka Province Chairperson Kennedy Kamba even threatened him, saying he should just take off his, church jacket, put on the jacket of politics, and we will deal with him. Several threats were issued. And that's why I said it's not new to have conflicts between the church and the party in government. But what I want to find out from you is, from what point of view is this feud healthy or unhealthy?
Leaders should accept criticism. The church is not your enemy. The church is not pushing a private agenda. The church is not pushing. The church is always pushing a community agenda, an agenda good for our people. And as leaders, we just need to calm down and accept. Don't worry about the manner of delivery. And I'm glad that you gave an example of when President Hakainde Hichilema was jailed. 3 bishops, led by Archbishop Telesfo Mpundu, traveled to Kabwe, to Mukobeko, yes, to see, President Hakainde Hichilema. For me, the church should always bring us together. The warring and battling should be between political parties, and we should find sanctuary in the church. The church has always criticized, especially government, because government has a reins of power. Government has reins and mechanisms to change the lives of our people.
Right.
So government will receive the heaviest criticism, not the opposition. All of us are bystanders to the development process, because the people with the levers of power to change the life of our people is government. And therefore it is very imperative that when government is not performing, is not delivering, that the harshest criticism goes to government and its leader, and the president in particular. I like the examples you gave, where you stated that what about criticism? The PF did offer criticism to the clergy, but you never heard President Edgar Lungu call anyone names, ridicule the church. Lower party members could have done that, but you never saw it at the highest of levels. And even when it was at the highest,
we never saw him condemn the lower organs of the party, which therefore suggests he condoned it.
No, not at all. For me, from my understanding, is that, look, he was always interacting with the bishops and archbishops, and every time they even offered the harshest criticism, maybe after a pastoral letter, you would see the Conference of Bishops at State House after that. For me, that inspired hope that he would like to deal with their criticism in a manner that builds government and provides a healthy relationship with the church in the country. The church has a way in which they communicate, and you're not going to change it. They stand at the pulpit, they issue pastoral letters, they will sit at a press conference, they will join in solidarity with alliance forces, either NGOs, trade unions, or lawyers, or anyone of like mind about a matter they are pursuing. You have seen the church come together with various civil society groupings, especially for issues of the constitution or any national issue. And that must be encouraged. That's what democracy does.
Time seems to be flying, but where do we separate personal opinion from speaking for the church? And I ask this because we saw a certain clergyman say this: it's better that we even rig the elections than vote for a certain individual. Obviously this, attracted a lot of criticism from the church itself, from the opposition, from some members of the Patriotic Front, and from, the international community.
Even that entire testimony was misunderstood. That's the trouble with sound bites. It gets 3 minutes. We've had an interaction here, over an hour, and someone can get a 1.5 minute, words of me and throw it out, and it can be misunderstood. That particular clergy, for me, I listened to the entire context. He was giving an example of President Michael Sata, how President Michael Sata couldn't become president in 2001. He broke away from the party for 10 years. And he said, until the Lord saw that Michael Sata was ready, that's when he was given the reins of power. Imagine the Michael Sata was given power in 1991. The fiery Michael Sata, yes. He probably was not ready to lead this country. I think it was in that context. Where do we separate the remarks that are personal? I think when the priest is in his priestly robes and is at the pulpit, he's not speaking in his personal capacity. He has assumed his office and is speaking in his official capacity as trained for many years, usually minimum of 10 years, especially for the Catholic, and he's speaking in his official capacity. And you can't say these are individual views, and they will respond in the manner that they can. Our Lord Jesus Christ called the king of the time a fox.
A fox, yeah.
He called King Herod, that is a fox. He went into church and threw out tables because he said business had taken over than his word. He criticized his fellow because Christ at the time, was being deemed as a prophet. At the time, they were very, very, very sacred men of God at the time. He exposed them for what they were. He said they're like whitewashed tombs because they wear these nice white robes and they look holy. When they are rotten, like a tomb and casket, they look very nice, but what is inside is rotten. Christ, we want to portray him loving. He was very loving but very strong. And he could use unpalatable, strong language. He called his mother that woman.
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes we forget,
I need to know, in the interests of time now, the Patriotic Front is, going towards a convention to choose a leader that will take the party into the 2026 general elections. Historically, there have been issues to do with the Patriotic Front constitution either being respected or not. For example, when President Edgar Lungu was voted party president, it was by show of hands. Nothing in your constitution says show of hands. Right now, there's a debate between, Matero MP, Miles Sampa, and others regarding the constitution and how things must happen in regards to the convention. And you're aspiring to become president of that organization. Tell me how you hope to sort this, mess before we get into the convention, so that after the convention, there's, what some people would call sanity in the Patriotic Front.
Yeah, the 2014 election of President Edgar Lungu was valid, was within the constitution. The show of hands was after a process was embarked on where, the Electoral College was established and, candidates were read. And so it was valid. I should just put it that way, that it was valid. The issues around my dear brother Mal Sampa, who's taken the party to court over a few issues. There are matters in court, and we encourage, that we desist from commenting about matters in court in light that we might be contemptuous as the matters are prejudicial. For our party, the path is clear. The roadmap is clear. We are dealing with the issues of the first membership, an audit of membership, an audit of leadership and party structures, and we're supposed to have, first of all, a constitutional conference, which adopts a new constitution, then we go to a general conference. The path is very clear. Former President Edgar Lungu, you are aware that he's in retirement. He's, of course, he's our party president, but he's in retirement, and he will hand over to whoever is elected at the party. We've had an acting president who's given Luwinda, and an acting Secretary General, Honorable Nixon Chilangwa. And, of course, parts of those issues are in court, where their appointment is being contested. But the party is running. Just last week we had a Central Committee meeting, where, and last month we also had a Central Committee. We are yet to have another one on, I think, June 10, to ensure that we continue with the work of the Central Committee, and that as soon as possible we get to a point where we can get a leader for the PF and a leader that should then prepare the party to 2026.
History seems to suggest that once a political party is out of power, that's it. UNIP happened to UNIP, it happened to the MMD. What makes you think the PF case is different?
The PF case is totally different because you can see how history is not repeating itself. The UPND won, the August 21 elections, and there is no one going to their party No one is moving. In fact, we have members going to the Socialist Party than to the UPND. So the UPND have made history. They're a political party which is a ruling party, which is failing to grow. For us, that is already a strong indication. None of that have happened. In 1991, you saw droves of UNIP members rush to the PF. In 2011, you saw droves of MMD members rush to the PF, including their leaders who served. I think we had about 9 ministers, about 7 of them deputy ministers, serving in President Michael Satta's government. 2021, we have seen the UPND, and no one is going to the UPND. They've tried very hard. They've tried to mobilize. There are no defections. There are no prominent people that have moved to their party. They have made history. So we are confident that we can make history too.
What makes you confident that you can become the party's president?
For me, I'm a servant of the people. Even when President Michael Satta asked me if I could serve in the rural areas, I said, Mr. President, if I tuli fibombelo, komo atutuala konse, eko tuinga bombela. And the party should use people that are selfless, that are clean, that bring fresh ideas, that are focused on developing our country and reshaping our country to its geopolitical status it should be. We are a respected country across Africa. We are a respected country across the world. We've never been known to bootlick any, whether it's the East or the West. We are seeing this phenomenon only under this government, where we don't seem to respect ourselves. We will not be caught, like there's a shoe, like there's a string and puppeteers pulling us. We need to restore our international credibility, which seems to have been lost in the region because we seem to be puppets of certain powers, and Zambia should never be like that. We are leaders, we are never tails. We pioneer, we are, we establish and people consult us, and we are respected at the African Union, at the United Nations, and Africa looks up to us, and we shouldn't lose that status. And on the development path of our country, it is very easy, Mr. Mbasela, that we have natural resources. We should transform this country too. We shouldn't allow foreigners to become billionaires over our national assets and our people remain, and their lifestyle remain unchanged. We need to go back to fundamental issues like developing agriculture, where we grow food for 400 million people instead of 20 million people, where we begin to push, especially cash crops, that can end this country, more foreign exchange, so that our foreign exchange market will be stable. Our kwacha now is a yo-yo. Today it's at 16, it rushes to 21, it once reached 22, it's back now, it's at 19. You can't plan in the long term. You can't borrow using foreign currency because you don't know where the kwacha will be tomorrow. And the mines and the mining sector, these are assets of our country. No other country has been bequeathed the assets of copper, emerald, gold, sugilite, and other things. I don't know why we are treating them like these belong to foreigners. We should get hold of those assets and ensure that they help develop our country.
Did you give this sort of advice when you served in government?
Oh, I've been very, very consistent. In 2011, I was writing a book. I think I even made some excerpts public. 2011, a rich country, poor people. Because the paradox for me shocks me that we can be a rich country but with a poor people. That was 2011, and I haven't had time to dust up my drafts, but I should now get to publicizing and publishing my thoughts. I've been very consistent on the agenda of our country.
So it's essentially the Emmanuel Mwamba PF, a complete deviation to, a large degree from the Michael Satta PF? No,
not at all. Each leader brings to the fore their unique style. President Michael Satta was an MMD, and he founded PF, and you saw how he transformed this country. President Edgar Lungu started his life as a UPND member, went to the PF. He never served in MMD. But you saw his leadership. President Akainde, I dare say, I think I remember in 2004, He was chair of many boards of companies, and there were accusations that he was UPND. And he said, no, actually, I've never been a member of the UPND. I'm actually, unless you accuse me of being a member of the MMD. That was President Hakainde Hichilema. You know, so we might have our beginnings in various vehicles, but our thought patterns, our proposals to the country are individual, where you ask people to buy into your vision.
Right. I'd like to very quickly understand what would be your domestic and your foreign policy. And I ask especially about the foreign policy with this in mind. Number one, President Michael Sata was very critical about Zambia's partnership, if you will, with China, the relationship with China. Late President Rupia Banda was in office then, and late President Michael Sata was very critical about that. When he got into office, we heard statements like Michael Sata's Chinese are different from Rupia Banda's Chinese. What's your sort of approach towards first domestic and then international relations with regards to the West and the East?
So we should be national in nature. National interest should override everything we are doing, whether it's a relationship within ourselves as a people or with our relation with our friends and partners outside the country. We should never take, for example, USA's interest on the LGBT agenda. We should never. It is their agenda. It's in their national interest, but it's not in our national interest.
Would you accept that?
No, not at all. Anything that's outside our national interest should never be accepted. We should be very clear. Be driven by the interest of your country, what it espouses, what it stands for, what it believes in. That's what should drive you. That way, you should be your own nation, your own country, you know, and encouraged by the aspirations of your people. You cannot allow the US to impose an LGBT agenda on you because they're coming with money. We might have to reject that money if it comes hard on that. And
the East.
And, well, our relationship, Dr. Kaunda showed us that you could be friends with Washington, and you could be friends with Beijing, and you could be friends with Moscow. He demonstrated how you can balance all those powers by being driven by national interest. So that's a space we should go back to.
In light of BRICS, for example, in light of BRICS, your approach to it would be what?
We should join the BRICS because it's a counterforce to the West, and it's a counterforce to, you know, it promotes the South-to-South interest of mostly Africa, Latin America, India, and China. We need that counterforce against the West and this hegemony and dominance in world affairs. We need the BRICS to emerge. We need an alternative to the US dollar, because the US dollar is not pegged to, for example, a gold standard. Locally, we should promote, like I stated, our natural resources should be exploited in a profitable manner, not where we're exporting raw materials like we do, unfortunately. We should add value to our natural resources. The beneficiation process and industrialization process should be pursued, and pursued very aggressively.
Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, the Deputy Information and Publicity Chairperson for the Patriotic Front, also a presidential candidate for that political party. He was my guest on tonight's special interview. Thank you very much for coming through. My name is Kausa Mbasela. Bye-bye.